Hi, Cornelia. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Good evening. I'm trying to get connected, but I don't know if I'm having some problems because it gets disconnected, it connects, it gets disconnected. And
That's weird. Okay, so let's try and hello? Okay, well, so nobody has joined today's class, and I'm going to record myself explaining the questions we needed to go over today. We're looking at the reading section, and in yesterday's class we're looking at the different question types we have in the reading section. Yesterday's class, we went through detailed questions and accept questions. So today and hi, Christian, good evening.
Hello, Andrea. Good evening. Excuse me to be late.
Don't worry about it. Carolina was joining, but I think she had connection problems.
Okay.
Okay. Either way, what we were saying is that we're gonna continue working on the questions today. We did accept and detail questions yesterday. So let's continue inference questions. Inference questions are different than detail because they won't be asking for information that is explicitly said or explicitly mentioned in the text anymore. They will instead ask for something that is implied in the text. That means something that wasn't said, but that you can kind of conclude from the text. Do you know what an inference is by any chance, or what it means to infer something?
Yes, it's like um, to maybe interpretar or based on. It's not always mentioned the answer, but you have to analyze.
Exactly, yes. You have to analyze, you have to think about it, and you have to draw conclusions based on evidence from the text. That's what we're going to do here. How do you know that you have an inference question? Because of how it's phrased. The inference question always contain the words inferred or suggested. So if you see those words, you know you're dealing with an inference question, and you have to approach that question in a specific way. So can you maybe read question 4 here?
Yes. What can be inferred from paragraph 3 about Quiquilo prior to 200 before Christ?
Okay, thanks, Christian. So I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to try to answer this question, and then we'll see what strategies to use.
Excuse me, Andrea. Could you roll down a little bit, please, to see the
Oh,
answer? Okay, thank you.
so what do you think? What do you think the answer would be?
I think it's D.
Yeah, okay. It's economy relied heavily in agriculture. Can you tell me why? Why you think they would be the one?
Because it says that a volcanic eruption affected this this place, and especially the agricultural land was covered by lava. And then other other towns emerged as economic powers.
Okay, great. So yes, perfect. So what you have to do for these questions is always first, and I'll read the question, make sure you understand what they're asking for. Now they're always going to ask you for something. What can be inferred? Now, sometimes they will ask about a specific thing. What can be inferred from this paragraph about this specific thing? And sometimes they will just say what can be inferred from paragraph 3 and leave it there. Now, in the first case, when they ask you for something specific, the process is similar to what we did yesterday. So you identify the main words, the keywords about what they're asking, and then you search for those keywords in the text, and you won't have to read everything. You just need to read around the keywords. However, if they don't ask you for something specific and they just say what can be inferred in general from paragraph 3, in that case, you would just have to read everything in paragraph 3. Now, in this case, they're asking for something specific. They're asking about Cuicuilco prior to 200 BC. These are probably going to be our keywords. You search for them in the text. Once that you find them, you start reading around. So it says, prior to 200 BC, a number of relatively small centers coexisted in and near the Valley of Mexico. Before drawing any inferences, drawing any conclusions about Cuicuilco prior to this time, we need the evidence first. We need to understand what we know, what the paragraph says about Cuicuilco, the information that we have about Cuicuilco, and then based on that information, we're going to draw a conclusion. So first, we look for what information we have about Cuicuilco prior to this date. First thing that we know is that around this time, Cuicuilco was the largest of those centers. That's the first thing that we know. It was the largest of the centers that coexisted. It could be in or it could be near the Valley of Mexico. That is the first thing that we know about Cuicuilco. We know that it was the largest of those centers that coexisted in or near the Valley of Mexico. What else do we know? We know that, as you said, there was a volcanic eruption that seriously affected Cuicuilco. So Cuicuilco was seriously affected by this volcanic eruption. And as you said, their agricultural land was the thing that was mainly damaged, right? Because it was covered by lava. So the volcano destroyed their agricultural land. That's the second thing that we know. And finally, the third thing that we know about Cuicuilco is that they were eliminated as a rival. And as you said, other towns emerged. But Cuicuilco was eliminated as a rival. That's all we know about Cuicuilco. They start talking about other towns, they talk about Teotihuacan, so we don't care about that. That's all the information we have. With that information, now we can start going over the options until we find the one that makes the most sense, the one that we can prove in a way with this information. Option A says it was a fairly small city until the date. Actually, no, right? They were the largest of those centers. And when they say until that date, that would mean that after 200 BC, they changed that. But we don't know what happened after, so we could eliminate option A. Now, option B says it was located outside the Valley of Mexico. Now, it is true that we have certain information about that. They said that Cuicuilco was in or near the Valley of Mexico. So it could have been inside the Valley of Mexico, or it could have been outside, near the Valley of Mexico. However, we don't have enough proof, we don't have enough evidence or information to come to the conclusion that it was outside. How do we know that it was outside and not inside? We don't, so we eliminate that option. Option C, it emerged rapidly as an economical and political center, is a typical trap that includes phrases or like words that are going to sound familiar that were mentioned somewhere in the text, but that are not related. Because even though something like that is mentioned here, they are not talking about Cuicuilco, they're talking about other towns. These other towns might have emerged. And we don't know how Cuicuilco emerged. There's no information here related to how Cuicuilco emerged as an economic and political center. We don't know if it was rapidly, if it was slowly, if they did emerge, or if they didn't. So we have no information to prove this point. So just by eliminating, as you said, we can conclude that it's option D, but it also makes sense the way that you explain it, because we know that the volcanic eruption affected them seriously. We know that their agricultural land was destroyed, And we know that after that destruction, they were eliminated as forever. They lost power, they went down. So something must have happened there. And what happened, as you said, is that they depended on agriculture. Their economy depended on agriculture. So obviously, this volcanic eruption affected them greatly because their land was damaged and they depended on their land. So yes, totally option D. And that's the process. You just read the question, you identify the keywords, search for them in the text, read around them, and then find the information, the actual information you have. Based on that information, you're going to be able to draw a conclusion from the options. Is that okay? Do you have any questions so far?
Yes, it's okay. I don't have questions.
Okay, perfect. So that was inference questions. Our next one is purpose questions. And as the name says, they're going to be asking for the purpose of things. That means they're going to be asking for the reasons why the author talks about something, the author mentions something, the author's choices, the author's decisions. So these questions could be like, why does the author talk about this? Why does the author use this word? Why does the author give this example? Or the author talks about this thing in order to do this. So they ask about the reasons why the author does something. And they could ask you for the purpose of a word, the purpose of a sentence, of a quote, of an example, of a claim, of an idea, the purpose of, or the purpose of an entire paragraph as well. Now, the best and the only way to answer this question is to always understand the main idea of the paragraph. That's if you got the main idea, then you're already halfway done. So it's important that you understand that main idea in the text, in the paragraph, and you're able to relate that main idea to the specific thing they're asking for. So we're gonna see what that means. But let's see that with an example. Let's see this one here. Could you maybe read the question?
Yes. In paragraph 6, the author discusses the driving obsidian operation in order to.
Okay, so they're asking for why the author discussed this thing, the driver obsidian operation. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to try to answer, and then we'll see. Okay, so what do you think? What would you say?
I think it's letter C.
Okay, great. So in this case, we said in order to answer these questions correctly, what you always have to do is understand the main idea of the text. So what would you say the main idea in this text or in this paragraph is?
Well, it is talking about the factors that make this city grow. For example, it talks about this obsidian, this commodity, and also talks about it it provoked that many immigrants went to this city, and then this as a result of this, the elite grow, and also so it's like many factors that were
Yes, they're talking about
provoked
all of these
the development of the city.
Yes, exactly. They're talking about all of these factors, but the most important thing is that they're saying that it's here, right? The picture of Teotihuacan is a classic picture of positive feedback. Feedback means retroalimentación among all of these factors that you mentioned. So I would say this is the most important thing. So basically what they're saying is that all of these factors like obsidian mining and working and trade and population growth, irrigation, religious tourism, all of that kind of cooperated with everything. Every factor had a positive influence on every other factor. And that is what made Teotihuacan, that's what led to the development of Teotihuacan, right? That's what led to the power and the wealth for the elite, for the city. That's what made Teotihuacan a good city. Because all of these factors were connected somehow, had a positive feedback among each other, right? That is the main idea here. Most of the time, not always though, but most of the time you will find the main ideas in the first 2 or 3 sentences, so it's always a good idea to read them. And if you have that, and if you understand the main idea of each paragraph, then, of this paragraph, then you're already, as we said, halfway through. Because what happens is in your answer, in your option, the correct answer is always going to have that main idea as the object of the option. Every option, if you look at it, contains a verb first, explain, give, illustrate, explain, and then you have an object. The object of the sentence is always going to be the main idea in the paragraph. In this case, as you said, this is the main idea, the object of this option. How several factors influenced each other, had a positive effect on each other to make Teotihuacan a powerful and wealthy city. That is definitely the main idea in the text. Now, why does that work like that? Because what happens is that when you write something or when you read something, each paragraph is like a unity. Each paragraph is talking about one single idea. So in this paragraph, they're talking about that one only idea. And everything that you can find in a paragraph, every single comma, period, punctuation mark, word, adjective, phrase, quote, example, evidence, fact, everything there is always gonna somehow contribute, support that main idea in a way. Now, in this case, you can ask yourself, now, how is this thriving obsidian operation or the discussion of this operation, how is that contributing or supporting the main idea, which we already know what it is? And if you think about it, you would know that it's an example because it says, for example. So the thriving obsidian operation is an example of that positive feedback among these factors. So if that is going to tell you the verb, in this case, we have explain why. It's not explain why because they're not explaining cause and effect, right? Or effect and cause. It's not a reason. It could be give an example. It could be illustrate. And it's not explain how because they're not talking about manners. They're not talking about the way that something happened. They are giving an example. So it could be give an example or illustrate, which is the same as give an example. But in this case, the only option that contains both the correct verb, give an example or illustrate, and the correct object, which is the main idea, is option C, as you said. Yes, totally option C. So to summarize, look for the main idea in the paragraph, and you know that everything that's there will contribute to that main idea in a different way. It could be an example, it could be evidence, it could be an explanation of why, so the reasons or the way that something happened, many different things. But at the end of the day, it's always going to contribute to that main idea in the text. So that's kind of the approach for this question. What do you think?
Oh,
Is it-
okay. So generally the answer is in the first sentences of the paragraph because there is the introduction, right?
Yes, in a way, not always, but the answer is always going to be in the main idea. Like 80% of the time, the main idea is in the first sentences, but it's not always the case. Sometimes you will have to read everything to understand the main idea. Sometimes you don't. But if you think that you have the main idea, then the answer is going to be that.
Ah, okay. I understand. Thank you.
Or, now, in order to practice, we're going to do another one from a different set because we don't have more of these questions in this set about the Tihuacan. So we're going to be working on a different set, which was about Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So we're going to be answering this question here. Can you please read the question?
Yes. In paragraph 4, what was the author's purpose of including a quote that they believe that the complexity of the human eye could have been formed by natural selection seems highly unlikely?
Okay, good. So again, they're asking for the purpose of including something, of talking about something. And I'm going to ask you to please screenshot the question, because the text is in another slide.
Okay.
Okay, so how would you answer this question? This is the paragraph. Let me know what you think. Okay, so what would you say?
Not sure, but maybe B.
Maybe, okay, B says, to prove that the natural selection contradicts the basis of Darwin's theory of evolution, that one?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that's the main idea in the text?
Yes, but I'm not sure.
Okay. If we start reading, it says Darwin's theory is that selective breeding occurs in nature as natural selection is the engine behind evolution. So natural selection is part of Darwin's theory, right? Darwin's theory is basically that selective breeding occurs in nature because natural selection is the engine. So I don't know if natural selection actually contradicts the basis of Darwin's theory. I would say that natural selection is part of the basis of Darwin's theory. Right? I don't know if there's a contradiction there. But if we continue reading, it says, thus, so for that reason, the theory provides an excellent basis for understanding how organisms change over time. Okay, that could be the main idea, but let's continue reading. Nevertheless, contrast, it is just a theory and elusively difficult to prove. One of the major holes in Darwin's theory revolves around irreducibly complex systems. An irreducibly complex system is known as a system where many different parts. Look at how all of these are details, right? Different parts, they start describing what an irreducibly complex system is. They talk about the whole description, right? All of this is details. This is a quote, okay? So I don't think that the main idea is going to be anywhere here, right? And this quote is probably going to prove something because quotes are there for supporting an idea. So the reason the main idea has to be in the beginning. What do you think the main idea is? Here they say one of the major holes. This is also a detail, right? Because we're talking about one specific hole. So what is the main idea?
The natural selection is the engine behind evolution.
I don't know. This first sentence is an explanation of what Darwin's theory is. This second sentence has an idea, an opinion, I would say, because it says that it provides an excellent basis for understanding how organisms change over time. And this is another idea, right? It's just a theory and it's really difficult to prove. In this case, the main idea is that Darwin's theory is just a theory and it's elusively difficult to prove. How do I know that that's the main idea? First, because it's not a fact, right? It's like it's same thing as this one here. It's an idea. Now, more than that, if you think about it, everything here is trying to. The reason why the author talks about faults in Darwin's theory, why would the author talk about holes in Darwin's theory? Why would the author talk about these shortcomings in Darwin's theory? Everything here, these irreducibly complex systems, are basically a hole in Darwin's theory. And then they start talking about this hole. Everything here is about irreducibly complex systems. So why would the author talk about that? Because they are trying to prove that it's just a theory and that it's difficult to prove, maybe because of these holes, these shortcomings that the theory has. Right? So there are certain holes in Darwin's theory. It's not perfect. It's just a theory and it's difficult to prove. That's the main idea, and that's the reason why they talk about these irreducibly complex systems. Right? The first one couldn't be the main idea because it's a description of Darwin's theory. It's not a point. It's not a claim to prove. This is just an explanation. But the claim, the main point, the idea is that it's a theory and it's difficult to prove. And then the author is trying to support that claim, to prove that it's just a theory and it's difficult to prove. And in order to support that, in order to show evidence that it's difficult to prove, they start talking about the holes in Darwin's theory. They talk specifically about one of those holes. So that would be the main idea in this case. And everything here is going to support that main idea, including the quote. In this quote, Darwin says that he himself admits that to suppose that the eye is formed or has been formed by natural selection seems absurd. So he himself is admitting that there is a hole in his theory. There's something that makes no sense in his theory. So there are certain shortcomings in his theory related to natural selection, right? And that's the main idea here, to prove that it's just a theory and it's difficult to prove. So in that case, which option would it be?
D.
D, right? It's option D. Can you see why?
Yes, no, yet.
Okay, good. So those are purpose questions, asking about the purpose of things. The main thing is to be able to understand the main ideas in each paragraph. And that's a skill that you're gonna need for everything, really, to understand the main ideas, not only here, but also for the writing, as we said, as we saw before last week, for everything. Now, our next questions are called paraphrase questions, and basically they will ask you to paraphrase a sentence. They will give you an original sentence from the text, and they will ask you to choose one option that is saying the same, but in different words. So the most important thing here is to focus on the main idea again. It's not about the words, it's not about the order of the words, it's about the main idea, the main purpose of the sentence as well. So it's similar in a way to purpose questions, but it's just about a sentence. The good thing is that it shouldn't take you too much time. You don't need to read everything, so pretty, I mean, it's a very quick question to answer. So, can you please read the question?
Yes. Which sentence is most similar to the following sentences? Sentence from paragraph 1. The theory is based on the assumptions that life developed from non-life and progressed and evolved in an indirect manner.
Okay, thank you. So I'll give you some time to take a look at the four options and tell me what you think or which one you think is the closest or the most similar to the original. This is about same thing, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution for some context. So what would you say?
Letter A.
Okay. So yes, perfect. It is option A. Now the tip that I can give you for this question is to always, well, obviously you need to look for the main idea in the original sentence. In this case, the original sentence is trying to explain or to show what the theory of evolution is based on, right? It answers the question. What is the theory based on? It's based on the assumptions that life developed from non-life and progressed and evolved in an indirect manner. The main idea, then, the main purpose of this sentence is to explain the basis of Darwin's theory of evolution. That is the main idea. So you needed to find one option that contains the same idea. Now, one tip that I can give you for these specific questions is to always look for the main verb in the sentence, because verbs contain the main ideas, always. So in this case, what do you think the main verb in this sentence is?
Based.
Exactly. That is the main verb, is based, and it's in the passive voice, so it would have to be is based. Because the purpose, again, is to show the basis of this theory, what the theory is based on. So then what you have to do, that now that you've identified the main verb, is look for an option that contains either the same verb or a close synonym to that verb. So in this case, if we pay attention to the verbs, the only one that contains the same verb as you chose is option A, because it says is founded on. So the purpose of option A is the same as in the original sentence, because it's trying to show the foundation of the theory of evolution. The basis, the foundation, what the theory is founded or is based on is exactly the same. If we look at the other options, they talk about what we can prove. It's not about the things that we can prove or not. So it's not option B. It's not about in which cases or under what condition his theory would hold true, because this is the main verb here. It's not about when his theory would hold true. It's not about that. It's about the basis of the theory. So not option C. And it's definitely not about whether it's hard or not to make assumptions. It's not about how hard it is to make assumptions. It's about what the theory is based on. So it's not B, it's not C, and it's not D. It's definitely going to be A. Of course, you need to double check. There are going to be things that are not going to be exactly the same. One thing that you probably noticed is that in the original sentence, we have that theory is based on assumptions that, and here we have the word evidence, which is not the same, I agree. But either way, we're not looking for something that's exactly the same. We're just looking for the most similar one. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether these are assumptions or evidence or hardcore evidence. The important thing is that the theory is based on the idea that life developed from non-life, which basically means that non-organic compounds are the basis of life, and that they developed or progressed and evolved in an unguided or an indirect way or manner. So at the end of the day, the important thing is that our sentence shows what the theory of evolution is founded on, what idea the theory of evolution is founded on, which is basically that life developed from non-life and developed in an indirect or in an unguided way. So it is definitely going to be option A. I also wanted to say that, again, the most important thing is the idea, the purpose of the sentence. So yes, option A. Is that okay? Do you have any questions? Do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, perfect. So I think we're gonna have to stop here. We are missing a couple more question tags. We're missing reference questions, insert text questions, and vocabulary and summary. So we're probably gonna finish tomorrow, and by Friday we can just practice with other sets. But I don't know if you have any questions before we go, or if everything is clear.
Just in this type of, but in the reading section, so what it is recommended is just first the first paragraph, the conclusion paragraph, and the first sentences of the body paragraphs, right? And then answer the questions, right?
Yes.
With these tips.
Because if you think about it, you can answer most questions, if not all, without reading at first. Technically, you're just reading to have a very brief, very overall understanding of what it's about, so that you're not lost when they say the theory. And because sometimes, even though you don't necessarily have to know what theory this is, you need a little bit of context, right? You need to know that it's called theory of evolution, so that you don't get lost for details. But in reality, if you notice, we can answer the questions just by reading the paragraphs. We don't necessarily have to read everything, because every paragraph is a unit. So every paragraph contains a different idea in a way. And yes, my advice is always to save as much time as you can. So don't read too much in the beginning, just as you said, maybe a little bit of the intro, the conclusion, and the first sentence of each body paragraph. And that should give you a good idea of what the text is about.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question?
No, it's all clear.
Okay, Christian, so please, before you go, today we actually have to do 2 polls, 2 surveys. I'm sending you the first. And when you're done with that one, I will send the other one as well. Okay, that was fast. Thank you. I'm sending you the other one too. Okay, Christian, thank you so much. I will see you later then.
Yeah, thank you very much. See you later.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.